Hello everybody, vanburman here. So before we begin with the main video, just wanted to do a little piece beforehand, just to give you a little bit of more background on the series as a whole. So in this particular video, I've looked at the two systems, the test bench and the laptop versus each other. So I don't want it to feel as though we're taking anything away from the 480. This is also a 480 comparison, but I'm quite, conscious that this will be heavily related around the Ryzen processor and the RAM and everything else. But just to assure you, and to assure myself, I have other ideas for the 480. A couple of videos that I want to do that will or can utilise the RX 480. So just one point. The other thing I want to mention very quickly, so I don't have to mention it later, is that my card that I've got does not overclock very well at all. Don't know if it's a fact of it due to being an ex-mining card or just didn't look out on the silicon lottery. That could have been a thing. Two more very quick points before I start, so we don't interrupt the video too much. I want to do more than just graphics cards as well. I want to look at some CPU coolers and maybe some different thermal paste and that sort of stuff, and not applications, everyone's done that, but yeah, some more stuff that doesn't include just graphics cards, so more sort of computer orientated, stuff that can be done quite easily and might give us some interesting results. But yeah, we'll see. I would like to know your opinion on the appetite for that. The other thing I would like to do as well, or that I will do, is I might mix up the games and the benchmarks, which might mean I have to go back and retest some graphics cards against them. But I think the suite of games that I've got for benchmarking is quite safe, and I'd like to be able to do other stuff. I am quite conscious that, I'd like to do Bannerlord, for example, but I'm well aware that that is constantly having improvements, and at some point they're going to release some that will increase the FPS by about 10 or so across the board. So yeah, stuff like that. But any thoughts on changes to games to benchmark as well? More than happy to take that on board. The less I have to do with Grand Theft Auto, the better. So just included it because, it's a very popular thing to include, and gives you a good indication of what you can expect. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'll place all the specs down below in the description on the screen for the RX 480. We're going to be taking a look at the test bench, codename Ruby, because of the Ruby Dragon from Final Fantasy VIII, actually. The reason for that is when the CPU fan spins up, when it first starts, it sounds a bit like a dragon breathing a big sigh. That is actually the reason, so don't knock me. But no, we're going to be looking at the RX 480, comparing it against the HP Omen Laptop with obviously the GTX 1060 in there. And on the face of it, I'd expect this to be fairly close. I mean, we're not going to be CPU bound, we're going to be GPU bound in this particular one. And, I would expect 1060 to outperform an RX 480. Mentioned before, but it is relevant. I didn't get any overclock, really, to speak of out of the RX 480, so it's pretty much stock. It does have the extra VRAM over the 1060, which may help it in a couple of different scenarios. Probably worth noting as well that the rest of the test bench is overclocked, or at least, the CPU is overclocked to 4 GHz, and the RAM is running on an XMP profile, and I actually managed to get one working for the first time ever. I'm sure you guys know what I'm on about with that. So, without further ado, let's get into the benchmark. So we're going to start with the easy, in quotations, set of benchmarks, which is, games that we should be performing fairly well on. And as we can see, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the results. We've got green there for the 1060 NVIDIA, and we've got red there for the RX 480. So the RX 480 does pull ahead in Left 4 Dead considerably. Obviously at these sort of frame rates, not going to matter. Both of them were running on 144Hz monitors, so I noticed no difference. I wouldn't say that anything ran particularly, better. Shogun 2 is a benchmark that apparently hates 1% lows. So, I believe in this one it was actually really tight, but according to my scoring metrics, the RX 480 took the lead on this one, and that one was perhaps maybe a slight surprise to me. I don't know whether the CPU played too much into that. So next we're going to be looking at the medium benchmarks, and once again we're relatively close across the board actually. Grand Theft Auto had probably the biggest variance in terms of a result for the RX 480. It had the minimum, had the 1% lows over 60 as well. It was a really good experience. I actually did a bit of playing in the sandbox with that, perfectly fine. Shadow of War, I actually, did the recording for this particular section, and it ran without any issues on Ultra as well. So I think maybe because I'd run the 1060 3 gig on Ultra, the 8 gigabytes of VRAM from the RX 480 helped it out in that particular scenario, because I think the texture pack for Ultra is sort of over or about 4 gigabytes. So Doom is the real interesting bit for me. To do the like-for-like comparison, I ran them both on OpenGL. Obviously, both have a 1% low of over 60 anyway, so it sort of puts them within the same ballpark. But just for comparison, I have put in the Vulcan Score for the RX 480, and when you combine that, you get a really impressive score. I know Vulcan is optimized to AMD, but this is the first time I have seen and done it, so it blew me away, really, to be fair. The difference in performance at Ultra was incredible. Doom runs and plays really well on all the devices, to be fair, but in this particular instance, really well on the RX 480. But just for clarity, I have gone on the OpenGL scores when it comes to a little bit later on. And finally, we're on to the hard benchmark now. We've got a bit of gameplay here from Metro 2033. I actually haven't played this for a while. Now, obviously, Metro 2033 does have is the benchmark score, along with as in the inbuilt benchmark, along with Final Fantasy 15 as well. Now, basically the same areas that the 1060 struggled with, the 480 did as well. I was actually really impressed with its score in The Witcher. Managed to get a higher 1% low than the 1060. Metro was a bit of an anomaly, actually. It's the biggest loss for the RX 480, from the 1060 in comparison. So it did technically better on the Final Fantasy 15, but yeah, then both of them aren't particularly great at high. Probably would want to play them on standard. When I got in the game and played Metro, I just left it on the default setting, but it ran really well, looked really good, and probably a game I should give a proper playthrough to. But one thing I will say is, and you can probably gather this from the benchmarks so far, is that these are really close in terms of gaming performance. And I'd just like to say, because they are, roughly the similar sort of price, with the test bench being mostly new parts and the laptop being a second-hand one, the laptop does really well, I think, considering. Obviously with some caveats, it's loud and it has to be plugged in, but the mobile 1060s really impressed me, and I know it's been a long time since, they have become proper graphics in their own, graphics units in their own rights, but graphics in laptops have absolutely blown me out of the water. It's the first time I've got to properly experience it as well. So now on to synthetic benchmarks, which, obviously not indicative of real world performance, because we've got a fair amount of difference actually in 3D Mark. The RX 480 pretty much, does beat out the 1060 across the board quite handily as well in some of them. Especially more focusing on the Firestrike score, and even though Time Spy might look low in terms of numbers, that is a big jump. Maybe it's to do, once again, I think it's more to do with the VRAM. Because I wasn't able to get any headroom out of the RX 480 and I was able to overclock the 1060, we've really brought it closer together. Cinebench scores are pretty much what you would expect. You've got a laptop grade processor in the i5-8300H, and the 1060 AF in the test bench is overclocked as well, and got more cores, more threads. You know, 6 and 12 for the 1600, and 4 and 8 for the 8300H. Was actually quite impressed with that. So here we have the user benchmark scores. I'm quite keen on this just to do a comparison. Gaming score both got the same, and I think we can probably testify that that's pretty accurate. CPU obviously is better on the test bench. We've seen that from the Cinebench scores. The RAM within the test bench has done really well with the XMP profile. Anything, you know, as you well know, or should know, anything over 100 on these is really impressive. So yeah, I think both did well in their own rights. Obviously the test bench edged it. So in my metrics, the test bench did win. Got a lower score by roughly around 24-ish points, or 23 something maybe. And yeah, won across the board other than the user benchmarks. So quite impressive actually. Didn't quite hit under 150, but I'm sure we might have something coming up at some point that may well do. Just want to thank you all for watching. I've really enjoyed doing these videos once again and doing the, you know, the benchmarks and the graphs and all of that good stuff. Please do feel free to let me know if there's any particular, you know, especially old bit of tech you want me to look at. You know, I am scouring for inspiration, and I have a couple of other videos in the works around that as well. But I think, you know, £100 for a used RX 480, you could do worse. And, you know, who knows what we've got coming up next. See you next time, guys. Bye for now.